Our relationship, I think at that point, things were coming down on us pretty hard, and we started to take care of each other a lot more.
Yeah. We did 72 of those shows.
CBS had tight regulations regarding editing the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Each second was scrutinized. Each word was vetted. But on September 17th, 1967, something escaped. The censors failed to pick it up. The director failed to catch it. Even the brothers were unaware until afterwards. As The Who performed, the camera inadvertently picked up something in the background. Something which confirmed what everyone knew, but could not confirm the Smothers Brothers account had its start in tragedy. Their father, Major Thomas B. Smothers Jr., was a soldier. In 1941, during World War II, he was stationed in the Philippines. When Japan attacked, his wife Ruth and their sons were evacuated. Major Smothers was taken prisoner. He survived the brutal Bataan Death March. Subsequently, he was dispatched to Fukuoka No. 22, a rigorous concentration camp in Japan. In April 1945, with the war nearing its end, he was too ill to work. On April 25th, he was relocated from Fukuoka to Korea. He never arrived. Some accounts indicate that he was buried at sea. Others claim that he was cremated in Korea. Of the 110 men who were moved along with him, 36 lived. Last to die was Major Smothers. Ruth had to care for Tom, born in 1937, and Dick, born in 1938, all by herself. They lived in California, and their mother worked long hours. Life was tough, and that hurt informed their comedy for years to come. That comedy career began in 1959 at the Purple Onion, a little San Francisco club. The brothers were only supposed to play for 2 weeks, but they were a hit and remained there 36 weeks. People adored their quirky combination of folk music and humor. One evening, a flamenco dancer was hurt. Tom and Dick had to replace her. That surprise visit proved to everyone how unique they were. When they finished their stint, they were making $2,000 a week. They were making $2 a night only a few months earlier. Their first album, The Smothers Brothers at the Purple Onion, came out in 1961. It set them off on their career. Well before the Purple Onion, they performed with a group Tom formed when he was in college. It was the Casual Quintet. Tom was on the guitar. Dick learned the bass just to be a part of it. The rest quit one by one, but Tom and Dick continued. They began telling jokes between numbers to pass the time. That was the true start of their style. They found out that people chuckled at their teasing of each other as brothers as much as they enjoyed the music. That sibling teasing became their signature. Tom played the innocent one on stage. Dick was the straight brother. They argued and scuffled before the audience. Tom would say, "Mom always liked you best," and the crowd would erupt. It wasn't artificial. It was just who they were. The authentic feeling of real life infused their comedy with an honesty that audiences could sense. They had a chance to go even larger by the mid-1960s. CBS was losing miserably to NBC's Bonanza on Sunday nights. Bonanza was pulling a quarter of America's television viewers. It had already devastated 2 other CBS sensations, Harry Mason and The Gary Moore Show. CBS realized they had to do something drastic. They needed to attract a younger audience. They hoped the Smothers Brothers could accomplish this task. Tom and Dick were hilarious, intelligent, and unique. CBS wished they could make the network appear hip again. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour first aired on February 5, 1967. On the surface, it appeared to be a typical variety show. Ed Sullivan presented them as regular American kids, but after a few shows, everybody could see that they were anything but regular. They made jokes about the Vietnam War. They made fun of politicians. They discussed actual issues. Their humor was edgy and courageous. Each week they broke rules, and people adored it. They outrated Bonanza within 2 weeks. Young people watched. Advertisers were delighted. Tom had insisted on complete creative freedom prior to beginning. CBS consented because they needed a hit desperately. That arrangement allowed the brothers the liberty of saying whatever they pleased. They had folk singers such as Pete Seeger who sang anti-war messages. They ridiculed President Johnson on national television. Each show was a shock. Each show was a gamble. CBS censors battled them at every step. The brothers battled back and frequently incorporated the censorship into the show. The writing staff was as bold as the hosts. Young comedy writers such as Steve Martin, Rob Reiner, Lorne Michaels, and David Steinberg started out there. They wrote jokes that counted. They blew past the traditional TV conventions. Many went on to revolutionize American comedy. Their work influenced programs like Saturday Night Live, All in the Family, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Something occurred on American television in 1968 that no one anticipated. On October 6th, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour televised the Beatles' promotional movie of Hey Jude. A few weeks earlier, on September 8th, the people of the UK had already witnessed it. But for Americans, this was the first time they could view this type of movie. They did not have music videos then. They were known as promotional movies. The Beatles had filmed Hey Jude at Twickenham Studios on September 4th. Paul McCartney even created the set himself. A large orchestra in white tuxedos played along. There were even 300 extras who sang the final part together. Ringo Starr had just returned to the band after having left temporarily. So this was not just a song. It was a grand moment for them. That was only the beginning. The following week, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour displayed revolution. Two Beatles clips, one after another, provided American viewers a new means of exposure to the band. Other programs, even The Ed Sullivan Show, could not accomplish this. The Smothers Brothers enjoyed access no one else had. It was a big change. Music was shifting. TV was shifting as well. In 1967, there was another major event on the same program. Pete Seeger was asked to sing. Seeger had been blacklisted from TV for years. The blacklist had excluded him from appearing on the air for almost 17 years. When he finally sang Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, it was a clear attack on President Johnson's Vietnam policy. CBS edited the song before it was aired in September 1967. Tom Smothers was not going to be silent. He ensured the news reached the media. Public outrage compelled CBS to allow Seeger to return. On February 25, 1968, millions of individuals finally witnessed him sing the song uncensored. This was the initial time a blacklisted artist addressed a president so unmistakably. It was an inspiring moment to demonstrate that protest music could transcend boundaries. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour also provided a platform for bands no one else would touch. Between 1967 and 1969, The Who, The Doors, Jefferson Airplane, Buffalo Springfield, and Stephen Wolfe all performed on the show. These are not safe bets for mainstream television. The Who finished one show smashing their instruments and detonating explosives in Keith Moon's drum kit. The noise damaged Pete Townshend's hearing and sent shrapnel flying. The Doors performed Touch Me with a full orchestra. Jefferson Airplane sang Crown of Creation, a song about the fear of nuclear war. Buffalo Springfield played For What It's Worth, and Stephen Wolf's Born to Be Wild brought raw energy into American homes. The Smothers Brothers didn't care if it scared the network. They wanted to provide these protest voices a platform to speak. That was the essence valued by some of the largest names in rock. Jimi Hendrix, on April 26, 1969, at the Los Angeles Forum, stopped before a song and dedicated his performance to the Smothers Brothers. He referred to them as heroes for keeping art and protest on television together. Rise was at the peak of his career. The show had been recently canceled by CBS as too controversial, but Hendrix did not forget. On stage, he informed everyone that the Smothers Brothers did count. Music and comedy had never been put together so well, and they did it with humor as well. A case in point was a regular bit entitled Share a Little Tea with Goldie. Lee French was Goldie O'Keefe, a spaced-out hippie who delivered humorous advice full of double entendres. T was short for pot. Goldie's was pronounced as Goldie Keefe, and everyone knew that's a colloquial term for weed. The censors forced them to change it, but everybody tuned in at home understood. Goldie referred to roaches, and nobody ever assumed she was talking about bugs. Younger audiences enjoyed the joke because it seemed like the program winked at them. Despite the network keeping a watchful eye, Goldie became a cult classic. Keith Moon was not one to refrain. On September 17, 1967, when The Who performed on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, he went even further than his usual antics. The band was set to perform My Generation, and Moon had a surprise. He had secretly loaded his kick drum with explosives. It was a whole lot more than anyone had consented to. Even his fellow band members did not know what was going to occur. Moon wanted the ideal ending: loud, sensational, and crazy. When the final section of the song reached them, the explosives exploded with a deafening crash. Debris and smoke flew across the stage. Part of the cymbal struck Moon, pushing him back. Pete Townshend's hair was blown up in a huge mess. The blow was so powerful it resulted in hearing damage that would affect the rest of Townshend's life. The sound was so powerful that it stunned the audience into not making a sound until they began screaming and cheering. Moon had caused turmoil and drama precisely as intended, but the cost was grim. Townshend would end up losing almost 90% of his hearing in one ear. The ringing afterward was agonizing and never actually ceased. Years later, Townsend continued to complain about the ongoing pain and how guitar playing became more difficult due to the damage. It was a moment no one would ever forget, and one that altered the manner in which they played forever. And then there was the guitar. In the midst of the smoke and disorientation, Townsend took Tom's Smothers acoustic guitar and destroyed it on stage. Smothers simply stood there, unable to even speak. It seemed like the perfect culmination of the mayhem, a big, defiant moment that indicated what exactly the Who were. They were breaking rules nobody had ever thought of crossing before. That blast and the broken guitar did more than grab headlines. It became rock history. Young people adored it. Older generations were appalled. The concert had given America something raw, rebellious, and real. Parents detested it, and teenagers thought it was freedom. It was a genuine split between generations. And it was precisely what the Who, the Smothers Brothers, and their counterculture fans desired. The concert would never be forgotten. Joan Baez was stirring up trouble also. She was a folk artist who advocated for peace and social reform, and everybody knew it. Born January 9th, 1941, in Staten Island, New York, she'd lived her life protesting causes she cared deeply about. By 1967, Baez had already been arrested for protesting, and her songs resonated with people who desired change. When she was a guest on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, she wished to perform a song to her husband, David Harris, who was to be jailed for 3 years. He was one of the few men who had refused to be drafted and protested the Vietnam War. Baez was not impressed with him and expressed that on the show, yet CBS edited out most of what she said, allowing only for a cryptic message before she sang. Baez's censor dedication was just one of many indications that CBS was intimidated. The network was afraid of offending the government and irate sponsors. Even President Lyndon B. Johnson himself had complained about the show. Johnson had stayed up until 3 a.m. to call CBS and demand they control the Smothers Brothers. Nixon followed, pushing even harder to get them off the air. In 1968, the show had booked Harry Belafonte. They put together a powerful performance. Belafonte sang Lord, Don't Stop the Carnival, while footage showed police beating anti-war protesters at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. It was bold. It was real. But CBS yanked the entire segment before it could ever be seen. And that was just the beginning. CBS later sold the 5 minutes they'd cut to the Republican Party or campaign commercials. What was to be a moving outcry against political violence became an alibi for the politicians being protested